Okay, so I don't know how I'm gonna start this video, to be honest, but the title is kind of accurate and it's kind of not. But before anybody says, oh, all it took was them nerfing like the super overpowered weapons and what's it called? This guy wants to leave the game. No, I'm honestly considering quitting Deepwoken and making like new content off like Deepwoken because of multiple reasons. One of which is how the game is designed currently, and I should probably explain deeper just so people kind of understand what I mean. But basically, Deepwoken back then was kind of like a permadeath game, and it actually had some real weight to it. And I do remember Reencounter's video where he criticizes people saying Deepwoken has no real permadeath because the top players obviously will not have to deal with the permadeath as much as the new players. Yeah, that's understandable, I get that. But back then, Deepwoken had an actual philosophy based off the fact that everything was supposed to be quote-unquote risky to do. You wanted to do anything, and you wanted to get powerful, you wanted to get strong, you actually had to do something that would quantify some sort of risk. Oh, my dog's... Come here, buddy. Come here. Alright, I now have my dog. But the thing is, the way Deepwoken's going, they plan on pretty much removing progression, and they were talking about having this thing where it would completely skip your progression. So it was a Power 20 ticket is what they called it. Now, I feel like it's obvious, a Power 20 ticket would not make any sense considering Deepwoken's main gimmick, or one of the main core attributes of the game, is the progression system. And by removing the progression system in favor of turning Deepwoken into a Battlegrounds game, you aren't playing Deepwoken anymore. And honestly, this update is probably, like, best way I could phrase it is the straw that broke the camel's back. And the reason why I say that is because Agamatsu, the way he does things is really bad from any standpoint you look at it. Pretty much, if you look at whatever Agamatsu nerfs, he nerfs based off the, like, balance server. Now, whilst me pretty much at this point maybe giving up on Deepwoken, I don't really have any ties to community. Theoretically, I could leak what's happening in the balance server, but I feel like if I did that, I wouldn't like be happy with myself as a person. But pretty much the balance server, I'm not allowed to say anything about it. But the way things are, balance is done based off of what the top players think, and given the fact that the top players, there's a main majority of people who are primarily not on heavy weapon or primarily not on anything but the current like top meta. Most people are on Gale Breath or Frostdraw or Shadowcast, and instead of nerfing the sensible things like, oh yeah, nerfing Crystal Impel's damage on Crystal or something, or nerfing maybe Gale Breath's unreactable moves like Windblade or anything like that, the Deepwoken devs, mainly Agamatsu, decides, what if we don't nerf anything based off that, and instead we nerf anything that makes the game unique? Deepwoken originally, as a game, was pretty much, it was described as, oh yeah, you can make pretty much whatever build you want. It's supposed to be skill versus skill. And at the time, in verse 1 Deepwoken, it pretty much was skill versus skill. I mean, there were definitely broken options at the time, but I mean, with the way people would play back then, in verse 1, I would progress from power 1 through 20 as a freshie with no master armor through Chimes of Conflict, and I would fight power 20s for my, like, EXP. Why would I do this? Because back then the game was actually skill versus skill, and people who were worse than me would actually not win. But with how Deepwoken is now, it's pretty much gimmick versus gimmick, or build versus build. Now, that's not exactly a bad thing, but at the end of the day, Deepwoken kind of just isn't what it is, or what it used to be, and that's honestly probably the biggest reason why I'm honestly considering quitting the game as a whole. Like, I promised a lot of things. I promised I would try to keep the game alive with community events like Deepwoken calling games, which I was going to work on, but at this point I feel too demotivated to work on anything because I'm not using what the majority uses. So most people, like, pretty much, if you want whatever you're using to not get nerfed and you want it to get buffed, you need to have people playing it in top chimes. If you have people playing it in top chimes, the people on top chimes will agree with each other and say, yeah, maybe this I like this because I use it, so I'm not gonna ask for any nerfs to it. So pretty much with things like Hellbreaker, which has pretty much no top 250s on it, people will automatically assume Hellbreaker is the easiest thing to use in the whole game. And then the devs are just like, yeah, cool, all the top players say Hellbreaker is like good. Which I feel like this is pretty obvious. The Deepwoken balancing like philosophy is flawed. If everything is based off top Chimes players, but the top Chimes players are using a like pretty much copy-paste build to everybody else, like every top Chimes player on the same build, you shouldn't listen to what they say should get nerfed. You should nerf what everybody is using, the same copy-paste curved build, right? Like, I mean, one of the main builds in Chime is curved, like just curved, attunementless rifle. Instead of nerfing things like attunementless rifle or maybe the ignition deep crusher stall builds for Chimes, the developers decide to nerf things that are actually safe to nerf, that have like minorities of the game playing it. Like, there's only 5-ish actually like consistent Hellbreaker players, and I popularized Hellbreaker as of kind of recent, and a lot of people hopped on Hellbreaker, at least tried it out. And sure, it wasn't for everybody, but at least the people tried to understand how it works and like what made it unique. But given the fact that Agamatsu isn't nerfing anything that's like super obnoxiously strong and in favor of whatever his lackeys or the people who like are in top Chimes say, that's kind of iffy. Plus, at this point, the thing about Deepwoken that like I personally like is the fact that I used to be able to play whatever I wanted to, and sure, I could still lose often, like before this update. I didn't have a perfect track record, I didn't have the greatest win rate, but what made it enjoyable was the fact that I could be unique on my own build. But after this update, my favorite heavy weapons got nerfed, my favorite talent got nerfed, and pretty much everything that I liked messing with for the past 5 months. I've been running this build for the past 5 months, mind you. Everything that I worked for on this build doesn't really mean anything anymore just because it's not Gale Medium. I mean, like, realistically, if I had made Gale Medium like a year ago, it would still be just as strong because the developers don't actually plan on nerfing anything that's like super prevalent in the meta, because now you have 50 people raging at you compared to the one person raging at you, right? But at this point, I'm not sure if I'm gonna experiment with new content or make a new channel for new stuff, because as much as I like Deepwoken, I don't want my whole like channel to be associated with Deepwoken if the game ends up falling out of favor in my eyes. There would be no point in me being called Darksteel Deepwoken if, for starters, I mean, I'm not even playing Deepwoken. And the reason why you've never seen me on Darksteel as of recent, as of like 3 years actually, is because Agamatsu and the dev team has a habit of just finding something that's quote-unquote strong and then completely gutting it and leaving it in the dust without buffing it back up. I mean, if we really look back at the old meta, like Shattered Katana, right? It used to be crazy good, but instead of equalizing it and making it on the same level as any normal legendary weapon, or not legendary weapon, making it on equal footing with any of the other medium weapons that people enjoy using, like rifle, they just left it in the dust, and now the only time it has viability is whenever it comes to PvE, and in PvE you just run Moppet instead, because Moppet's like better. So it kind of sucks, because Deepwoken has had a very, very long track record of just nerfing things and nerfing things. And really quick, I just want to compare the Hellbreaker, and the Railblade stats. The Railblade does 41 damage, the Hellbreaker does 46. Keep in mind, Railblade has more pen, Railblade swings faster. Railblade also is only like 100 weapon with the scaling, and the Hellbreaker is 100 with the scaling, and it only does 5 less damage, right? Also, this is enchantable, this one's not, and one of them actually has a viable crit in the current meta, which hasn't been touched, and the other doesn't. I feel like at this point, I need to explore my options, when it comes to content. And I do apologize to anybody who is expecting a ton of Deepwoken content this summer. I wish I could provide, but the main issue is I was like motivated barely to do content on Deepwoken in the first place, and I've been playing a lot of other games, but with the updates progressively getting worse in favor of pretty much whatever the top Chimes player says, I don't think I feel like I want to stay in this game anymore. So that's all I really have to say for this video. It is going to be 10 minutes, and quite possibly could be one of my last Deepoken videos. I don't think that's going to be my last, because I want to at least end with a solid video that people will enjoy before I, like, inevitably leave this game. But I don't know if I want to leave it now. But I guess time will tell, or whatever the phrase is. So, goodbye.